After attaining which, man is not rewarded. In so situated, even at the hour of death, one can answer is to God. 33, text 1. Arjuna Uvacha Jayasi Chaittamanaste Vijnana Tatkim Garanto Deva Yogo Janasi Ganesha. Translation. Arjuna said, O Janaki, O Krishna, why do you urge me to engage in this ghastly warfare? You think that intelligence is better than for it. Text 2. Yameshayana Bhagena Yudhim Moha Yasi Have Tadvudam Varushtitya Position. Intelligence is bewildered by empirical instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively what is most beneficial to me. Text 3. Translation. Blessed Lord said, O submiss Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who realize the self. Some are inclined to understanding by empirical philosophical speculation, and others are inclined to only by devotional will. Text 4. No karanam Aishkarnam Purusha Shvide Ancha Sangyasna Deva Siddhi Samyasvashiti. Translation. Not by merely abstaining from one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by realization alone, but wanting to move the reflection. Text 5. Nahi kashtu sana api dhatu tishna karmate kayate yavasya brahma sarva prakriti jayana. Translation. All men are first to act helplessly according to the impulses born of the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. Text 6. Karmendriyani samyamya ya asaste buddhasasaram indriyartam vibhudatma vidyachara suchite. Position. Understanding the senses and organs of action, but whose mind dwells in the sense of others, thirdly to lose himself, is called activity. Text 7. Yasvindriyam manasam Translation. On the other hand, he who controls the senses by mind, he engages into active organs and works of devotion without attachment, is by far superior. Text number 8, last text. Yatam guruvamatam dharmajayam sakarmanaha dharmiyayam vicharenam Translation. When we prescribe duty, for action is better than inaction. A man cannot even maintain his physical body without work. Text number 7, chapter 2, page 151. Or 152. Translation. The person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled, it is always still, and alone achieve peace, and not many strives to satisfy such desires. Although the vast ocean is always, especially in the rainy season, being filled with much more water. Ocean remains the same, steady, not agitated. It doesn't cross beyond the limits. That is also true in the person fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one has the material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. A Krishna conscious man is not in need of anything because the Lord fulfills all his material necessities. Therefore, he is like the ocean, always full in himself. Desires may come to him like the waters and the rivers that flow into his activities, and he is not even slightly disturbed by desires for sense gratification. That is the
inclinations for material sense gratification, although the desires are present. Because he remains satisfied in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he can remain steady like the ocean and therefore enjoy full peace. Others, however, who fulfill desires even up to the limit of liberation, or to speak of material success, never attain peace. The fruit of workers, the salvationists, and also the yogis, who are after mystic powers, are all unhappy because of unfulfilled desires. But the person in Krishna consciousness is happy in the service of the Lord, and he has no desires to be fulfilled. In fact, he does not even desire liberation from the so-called material bondage. The devotees of Krishna have no material desires, and therefore they are in perfect peace. So this is very interesting, that the desires for sense gratification remain as long as we have this material body. But all those desires are automatically fulfilled by one in Krishna consciousness. So the person in Krishna consciousness isn't interested to make separate endeavors to satisfy all the varieties of material desires which are there naturally. He tries to satisfy Krishna's desire, and then naturally, because we're Krishna's parts and parcels, our desires are satisfied. Just as it's natural for the tree's leaves to be satisfied when we satisfy the desire of the tree as a whole, which is to water the root. So we were hearing this morning from Srila Prabhupada that the main, or the primary factor of our bondage as conditioned souls in the material world is the attraction between man and woman, or female and male, in the different varieties of bodies. There's 8,400,000 bodies, and Prabhupada was describing that the attraction for the opposite sex is within all of these forms, not just the human society, but all the societies. So we can understand this is part of the material quagmire, and we have to learn to satisfy Krishna's desire under guidance of the spiritual master, and then automatically whatever desire may be there, whether it be for health, for mate, for all these different facilities that we may want, those things will be achieved. And Prabhupada starts using words like peace near the end of the purport. And he states that there's different persons who are all progressively, or all interested to gain some like progressive states according to their knowledge, right? So the yogi is interested in some sort of progressive state, some where he is able to achieve some powers, which he may have heard about, or he may be able to imagine like that. And the fruitive workers are also hankering after some progressive state, right? Some achievement. They're trying to achieve something. And they have some idea. Every person is interested to make some improvement or make some progress. Just like the material society is claiming, or they are championing the progress, or the so-called progress of advancement in material sense gratification, or the material amenities which are afforded by technology and varieties of different, gadgets, gizmos, and mechanisms. So the modern society is calling this progress. According to their consciousness, according to their knowledge, they're searching for that result. And we were hearing that many times yesterday. Krishna states, Ye yata mam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham. That mama manu vartante, that manusha nam varta sarvashaha, right? That all men are following my path, meaning that all these persons are relying on Krishna to get the results of their activities, though they may not be conscious of his hand in awarding the fruit of result through the agency of material nature or the demigods. They may not be aware that they're receiving liberation only by his grace, right? Or they're achieving mystic powers only by his grace. They may not be aware of that, but ultimately they must be awarded by him only. So these are different persons. They're all trying to go for different goals, right? And there's an interesting verse that I thought of, which is that all these persons, their hopes are baffled, right? Moga sha moga karmano, moga jnana vichetasaha, rakshasim asurim chaiva, prakritim mohinim shritaha. That they are taking shelter of the demoniac and atheistic nature, right? And those persons, their hopes for liberation, for fruitive activities, and their knowledge, the cultivation of knowledge, right? They're all baffled, right? When we don't surrender to the Lord, then all those different things are unachievable, or more or less useless. So we have to understand which desires are worth chasing and really trying to cultivate. And those desires have been explained very nicely by the previous acharyas, that we can learn what the desire of the soul is, or what the desire of Krishna's eternal servant is, and we can understand that that's who we actually are behind all these coverings of the soul, which are subtle and gross. Yes, Senator Goswami.
The desires of the fruit of workers is never satisfied. So we shouldn't think that this verse is being said that Krishna fulfills all their desires. Not like the karmis get their desires satisfied, because they're never satisfied. Whatever they get, then their desires increase. If they get so much money, they want more money. They get so many women, they get more. They want fame, they want more fame. So there's no question of their desires ever being fulfilled. Actually, the only way our desires can be fulfilled is through spiritual attainment, because we're spiritual beings. Like a fish, when he's not in his habitat in the water, his desires can't be filled. Similarly, unless the living entity is on the spiritual platform, relating on the spiritual platform, there's no question of happiness. And then the question is, well, does a new devotee have peace? Yes, he has peace. And the more he becomes advanced, his peace gets more and more peaceful. Because we sometimes tell people, if you chant Hare Krishna, you'll be peaceful. That's true. And why? Because your heart will become purified, you'll get transcendental knowledge, and you'll feel bliss. Anandam buddhi vardhanam, pratipadam purnamrita sadhanam. Transcendental knowledge, bliss. In that way, one becomes more pure. And when he's more pure, his desires are diminishing. So even the desire for those things, it may still be there. Prabhupada said, I was there personally. He gave a lecture for the first sannyasis, second group of sannyasis. The first one was one person. There was 4 sannyasis in Los Angeles, 1970. And he said, now that you've taken sannyas, doesn't mean you won't have any material desires. But now you cannot act in them. So he drew the line that this person doesn't mean you won't have material desires, you just can't act on them now. Now you're committing yourself to Krishna consciousness, and the option to fulfill or try to fulfill any material desires is not there for you now. Whereas if you're grihasta, you can't. If you want to engage in that, you can do it in a regulated way. But once you take sannyas, then it's supposed to be finished. Can't act on it anymore. And what will happen? Should you just think about it? Well, because people might think, well, I'm a pretender. Word is used in one of our verses. Yeah. He's one who control, which verses? Yeah, it's one of the verses.
3:6.
Yeah, this one here, he says, He's not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean. So it's not that the ocean doesn't get rivers of desires coming into it. And it's a good opportunity to become agitated, but it doesn't become agitated because it's so full. And why is it so full? That's the ocean. And the devotee has to be full in devotional service. The ocean of devotion is the nectar, ocean of bliss. So that's why Sri Rupa Goswami calls the nectar of devotion, the ocean. So he's full because he's satisfied. His senses are satisfied. How? He has desires for material sense gratification. No, not by material sense gratification. He can't be satisfied that way. He's satisfied because he's giving his senses, he's purifying his senses. Sarva pati vinir muktam tatpar dayan nirmalam. Rishikena rishikesha sedam bhakti uchate. He's engaged in bhakti. His senses are becoming purified. And therefore he's losing his desire. So many instances we have, a person starts chanting or doing devotional service, and he loses interest in what type of sense gratification he was doing before. Why is that? That sense gratification is still there, it's still available. He's not interested though. He doesn't want it. I mean, if he's not careful, his mind may lie there. But because he's careful in devotional service, he doesn't allow the mind to become fixed. We read that the other day. Mind, jayato vishayam pungsam. If he allows his mind to become attached to something, then it meditates on it and becomes attached. And then attachment, anger, lust, all these things come by not controlling his mind. So the bhakti yogi is controlling the mind. He's chanting. Why is spiritual master made it so incumbent upon the disciples to chant 16 rounds? Because if you chant 16 rounds a day, your mind is going to be on Krishna more than it was without doing that. That's a good step in the right direction. His mind is going to be engaged. And when his mind is engaged, then in Krishna, then it's not engaged in other things. It takes it away from the other things. Just like a person in material consciousness, he has to watch certain football games, he has to read certain newspapers. So many things he has to do to pacify his mind, because his mind is so disturbed. He has to take intoxication, he has to eat passionate foods, he has to say passionate things, do passionate things, hear passionate. Passion is just increasing. But a devotee, he's losing his interest in those things. He doesn't watch passionate movies. He doesn't talk passionate words. He doesn't hear passionate this, that, so many things. So notice he's learning how to control his senses. Therefore, his senses are being elevated from where they were, ignorance, passion, goodness. Now they're coming to transcendental goodness. And he's just not desiring those things. But those are the things that make you agitated. So what are his desires now? Prabhupada said, we don't give up the desire. We give up the desire for material things. But having a desire for spiritual things is all right. It's good. Desire is not bad. It has to be transcendental desire. If a devotee wants to distribute a lot of books to please Krishna, spiritual master, that's a good desire. Now you may say, well, what if he also desires to be famous for something and get some prize winning, get some self-pity? That's not pure. But there's so many purifying things in that activity that if he sincerely keeps trying, he'll also get more pure in his performance of that activity. So Krishna consciousness is such a perfect process. It works for the one who's very advanced, who's tasting the full nectar, for which we're always anxious, or for a newcomer, he's beginning, he's not tasting the highest thing, but he's tasting something a lot nicer than he's tasted before. And that's enough to inspire him to keep going more and more every day. Prabhupada would say, you can try to give them $1 million, bribe them to give up Krishna consciousness. They won't do it. This is amazing. You can't get them to leave. And it happens sometimes. Rich parents would offer them $1 million. They're not interested. Thank you, but not interested. How does that happen? They think it's brainwashing. I think it must be some kind of mind control, some kind of brainwashing. Voodoo or something they're using on them. No, it's love of God. That love of God is awakening. And therefore, even a little awakening of love of God is so powerful that it just obliterates the material desires. He gives up nadanam, najanam, nasundarim, kavitam va jagadishikamaye, mama janmane janmanishvare, avatad bhaktir ituki kai. He doesn't desire wealth, followers, beautiful consorts. He's not interested. Even liberation, he doesn't care for that. Merging and giving up all desires, he has no desire for that. That, in fact, he considers that to be what is it? Those who want to, was that verse? The desire for oneness. Anyway, he desires his hellish. He's not interested in it all. And he's not interested in the heavenly planets. He considers it phantasmagoria. So this is amazing. Things that these people, even these are people that are looking for something more than just ordinary sense pleasure. I mean, going to the heavenly planets is more than people can imagine on this planet. So these are great desires, but still they're nothing. They're insignificant to a devotee. Kachin vachinvan api divyaratnam swamin kritartosmi varam layache. Guru Maharaj said, I wanted a bigger kingdom than Lord Brahma. But now I see that was, now that I've seen you, I've seen you through devotional service, through the mercy of my spiritual master. I've seen you, I'm engaged in devotional service. I have no more desire for these things. Kachin vachinvan, they're like pieces of broken glass. I was looking, now I have those wonderful jewels. What do I need some broken glass for? So that's what a devotee thinks. I haven't given up anything great. What I gave up was like pieces of broken glass. What I've gotten is the greatest jewel. That's Krishna.
Okay. So are there some questions maybe? Okay. Jagannatha Prabhu.
Um, so this is in regards to Maharaj's comments on passion and bliss. On the point of passion, if one lets this passion control his life, does it then turn into ignorance? And then my second question, you can answer either one, but I was just wondering, what is this bliss? Because, or is it a feeling of ecstasy or a sense of purpose and satisfaction?
Well, there's some nice verses about, passion, ignorance, like that. The result of work in the mode of passion is misery. We can find some things that are in the 18th chapter. We can try to go there. So everyone go there and see if you can find something of a mode of passion in there, and then we can see what we got. Mataji may have one.
Hare Krishna. I think 1827 speaks about a worker in the mode of passion.
Okay. So 1827, but that worker who is attached to the fruits of his labor and who passionately wants to enjoy them, who is greedy, envious, and impure, and moved by happiness and distress, is a worker in the mode of passion. So when we work in the mode of passion, right? And it's also we're holding fast to some result. So the 18th chapter there's a few categories, and passion, ignorance, and goodness are mentioned in each of those categories. Understanding, work, like that. So there's a famous verse, which is that it's 1838 as well. And this maybe can be something to remember. Krishna gives some type of like an analogy. It says that happiness, which is derived from contact of the senses with their objects, and which appears like nectar at first, but poison at the end, is said to be of the nature of passion. Purport: a young man and a young woman meet, and the senses drive the young man to see her, to touch her, and to have sexual intercourse. In the beginning, this may be very pleasing to the senses, but at the end or after some time, it becomes just like poison. They are separated, or there is divorce. There is lamentation, there is sorrow, etc. Such happiness is always in the mode of passion. Happiness derived from a combination of the senses and the sense objects is always a cause of distress and should be avoided by all means. This is a very interesting way to describe this scenario, because what we can understand is that all the senses are wanting to contact the sense objects which match. So for a soul who's embodied in the male form, he wants to use his eyes to experience the form of the female. A soul who is embodied in a male form wants to experience the odor of somebody in the female form. And on we can understand, right? And actually, if we allow ourselves to see, to touch, to smell, etc., hear, etc., then we're running the risk because we know we're conditioned. We know we're conditioned. So if we're conditioned, that means that we are interested to gain some pleasure without remembrance of Krishna from contact of the senses with the objects of the senses. So it's dangerous and we have to be careful. Therefore, there's, as Maharaj mentioned, there's the ashram called Grihastha ashram, which is meant for that combination in a lawful way, which is sanctified and holy under the blessings of the Acharya and Krishna himself. It's actually a samskara. There's actually vows that one takes, right? So it becomes a sacred thing and it becomes a gradual process of purification. And sometimes we can say, well, for the sake of service, I will contact the senses with the objects of the senses in different various ways, right? We have to be careful that it's been prescribed for us. And we also have to be careful that we're ready to handle the repercussions because we're conditioned. So if we're not able to handle contact of the senses with the objects of the senses, then we should be careful because those impressions will be on the mind. That means more and more chances for contemplation, as Maharaj is mentioning. When we contemplate, then we're going down the slippery slope, right? Because then we become attached, then become lusty, then become angry, then we become delusional, then we lose our memory, then we lose our intelligence, then we fall down. What does that fall down? That fall down means we do something on the material platform. That means we do something in forgetfulness of Krishna. And the pure devotee, he laments, even if I do one moment in that consciousness, that is the greatest loss. That is the worst thing that can possibly happen to me. And unfortunately, there's a difference between a neophyte and the pure devotees or the Paramahamsas, the Acharyas, is that we're always speaking for the conditioned souls like myself. We're always doing things for our own pleasure, separate from Krishna, separate from service of Krishna. Or at least we're not pure yet. So something is there. So Maharaj was giving that bright side, which is so important for us to stay on that side of things. But we always have to be careful. We always have to be careful to stay on that bright side, right? So by contact certain objects with the sense organs, there's an opportunity to go to that, place where I am contemplating something without service to Krishna involved. It's not in my duty. It hasn't been prescribed. It's not on the transcendental platform. Then I have to be careful to stay on that bright side and to know if I just keep serving Krishna in a safe, steady, regulated way, I'll get there. I don't have to be kind of overly confident. I can talk to anybody. I can touch anybody. I can smile at anybody. I can joke with anybody. I can eat anything. I can see anything. I can hear anything. I'm Krishna conscious. Right? It's dangerous. So that's my reflection on that. That pride, arrogance, these things are in the mode of passion, ignorance. So we have to be careful. Always humble. That's the mode. That's the constant remembrance. We have to be constantly remembering. So those are some points. Maybe we can. Is there anything else, or what does it say there? Okay. So let us end. Bhagavad-Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees.